Welcome back to another episode at Consciously Evolving Enterprises. As always, I'm your host, Mr. Ryan Dillon Brasington. Today we are talking about suicide, so please, listeners' discretion. You are advised if you are suffering with any thoughts of suicide or taking your own life or even harming yourself or somebody else, please call Lifeline 13 11 14. They are a fantastic help and they are a 24-hour, 7 days a week service. Now that's out of the way, ladies and gentlemen, let's get on with the story. So, like I said, suicide is something difficult to talk about. It is not often a topic of conversation, and when it does happen, a lot of people do feel a shame about it. And it often does go unspoken. It gets pushed into, they lost their life. It's not covered in the media a lot either. So unfortunately, it's not something that we do talk about, and it should be more of a conversation. Unfortunately, myself, I have lost a couple of friends to suicide. It is quite damaging to those people that are around them, those people that love them most. So I do advise again, if you are sensitive to the conversation or the topic that we are talking about today, please tune out, skip the episode, go to another one. But ladies and gentlemen, this story is about a good friend of mine, Phil. Phil was a fantastic guy. He was always that real larrikin, taking the joke, taking the piss, seeing the kind of giggle in life. He's always very assertive, he was a very tall, strong man. Big beady face, big grin, and unfortunately, for unknown reasons, he did take his own life. We do have a couple of indicators. There was family trauma there. There was military history as well, and some mental health issues. But again, it's the people around him that did suffer from the aftermath of what had happened. And me being his best friend, obviously, I was very distraught. Myself, I'm trained with people who might be feeling feelings of suicide, and I do believe that if I spoke to him that night, it might have changed the outcome. But unfortunately, that conversation didn't happen, and he chose not to call me, and and the outcome was that he lost his life. Many other people in his life he could have contacted. His fiancée at the time and 3 children were home in the wee hours of the morning. So they were unawares that in the garage, Phil had already consumed a great amount of alcohol. They were aware that he had consumed alcohol, but weren't aware that he had obviously gone into a state where he was feeling suicidal, and unfortunately that did lead to him taking his own life. He was found earlier on that morning, but like I said, he was that big giant that everyone loved and adored for his sense of humour, and for who he was. And my loss that I couldn't talk my friend down from something that I was unaware that was happening. So the real shock and horror there, that someone that you truly love is now no longer here, and you don't know the reasons why. It wasn't a car accident, it wasn't a murder, it wasn't an accidental death. He had chosen to take his own life. And like I said, it is difficult to talk about, and not many people do. And being a guy, we don't talk about this stuff. We keep all our emotions in, we bottle it up, and we try to get on with the day. And I tried to see, the humour that Phil had. I tried to see the life that he had. He was very much into marine life and into his into all of his outdoor creativity. I wouldn't call it architecture, but he would make some really good stuff that would be useful. Beehives are one of his favourites, or B hotels. But anyway, in remembering him and for who he was, the weeks after, you're obviously emotionally distraught. And it does affect the people around you. Like I've said that a few times already. And my closest person to me at the time was my girlfriend. And Mel was very supportive through everything that had happened. But unfortunately, wanted to continue her own life in the momentum that it was. For me, my life had completely come to a slowdown, almost to a halt with this shock. And for me, every day was moving in slow motion, going through the waves of why my friend is no longer here. Where Mel, unfortunately, because she wasn't as close to Phil, didn't have those same emotions. Me being a guy, I didn't share mine. And unfortunately, this did become a divider between the relationship. Mel wanted to continue to get a second pup and breed those puppies. Those puppies were going to live in our room. We hadn't had any time in our relationship, unfortunately. And then, on top of that, she then decided and wanted to get pregnant. We spoke about having babies in the past, but now it was a made decision. She wanted to have babies, and she'd gone to the clinics to go and make sure that was going to happen. And without weeks or months passing, without me even realizing, I had already been booked into a date to go and donate sperm for her to be impregnated. And the conversation came up about pregnancy, and she said, yeah, you're booked in on Thursday to go and give your specimen, and then I'll be inseminated on Saturday. And I was like, excuse me, what? Pardon? And she goes, yeah, you're going in on Thursday to give a sample so I can be inseminated. And I was like, so we're going to have a baby? And she was like, well, yeah. And whoa, hold on the brakes here in a sec. Not only am I still grieving for the loss of my best friend, we've gotten dogs, we've moved in with each other, we've gotten household goods and appliances, sharing everything and budgeting since, and now we're talked about babies, and now we're having babies. And unfortunately, that was a real lightning strike at the time for myself to realize that I had been floating mentalist for the last few months, meaning that I hadn't been paying much attention to my own life because I had been mourning. And this unfortunately did lead to a divider in that relationship where we did break up. And then I went and moved in with some friends, and Mel was very understanding in the breakup. It wasn't a violent or malicious one at all. And I do commend her for being strong. But I still think that she didn't realize what I was going through, because being a male, having the strength to express that was very difficult. But like I said, I did move out into a friend's place, and within a few weeks of settling into that place, starting to get a bit more momentum back in my life, and a bit more mental health about me, that person that I was living with got a notice to say that their house was being sold and they could no longer rent there. Meaning that they had to move out. So once again, I'm thinking, oh gosh, here I am. I'm going to have to pack up. I'm going to have to leave. And anyways, from that, going few days, not weeks, but within that 19-day period, for me, it was 14 days that I had to leave. So 7 days passed, still frantically trying to find somewhere else to live. I ended up going to what they called a boarders lodge. Now, this is very much like a backpackers lodge, but for long-term attendees, meaning other males that have had relationship breakdowns, drug addictions, left jail, or some other circumstances in their life where they've ended up in this facility. And now here I am heading towards that same facility. Anyway, I think, well, this is my only option left. It's either this or homelessness. I get to the facility. It is literally a room, brick walls, a bed in the room with a coffee table. And I think, well, this is living across the hall. You've got your toilet, you've got your shower, you've got facilities, big sign, you've got to supply everything yourself, your own soap, toilet paper, etc., etc. Totally understand that. But, I'm now sitting on a naked bed thinking this is where my life's at. I'm now living in a boarder's house in a brick wall room that, barely breathes any life or creativity at all. So my first goal was to get out of there. Unfortunately, the obstruction to that was my car ran out of registration. So now my ability to be mobile had been obstructed. And I had to save the registration first. Ended up getting that done, then recovering myself and recuperating, finally gathering up enough cash to get out of that borders facility and move to a beautiful place over at the entrance where I can now again have my daughters come and visit and feel safe and secure in a beautiful place where I feel comfortable myself. Thanks for listening, guys. Like, subscribe, do whatever you kids do these days. Thank you.